Today we will speak about what is called as glam metal or hair metal. This kind of music was very famous in the last years of the 80s and in the beginning of the 90s until grunge came on, and the glam metal of the United States, especially together with the thrash of these years and death genre, they fought until some years after that. Today we can speak that we have we have bands with influences from every kind of metal that it was in the past. Also, let's begin with my favorite albums of this genre. First of all, if we're speaking about glam and hair metal, we can't not speak about Motley Crue, and for me their favorite album of them is of course the first album, Shout at the Devil. A very good album that of course is more metal than glam. And then continue with another also very good band of glam metal, Cinderella, and their first also album, Night Songs. Another also band of these years, Rat, and their first also album, Out of the Cellar. And another album and another band that came a little bit afterwards, but they have also very influenced from the glam metal, Skid Row, and their first album, Skid Row. Another also band that we can tell that they are also influenced from the hard rock of the 80s, but they were in the 90s, in the beginning of the 90s. Firehouse, and their first album also, Firehouse. A very good album. Another band that maybe is more heavy metal of the 80s, a little not so glam metal, but they were very active in the years of the glam metal. And we're speaking about Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot in the beginning, they have, if I'm not mistaken, in the beginning they had 4 albums with Randy Rhoads as a guitarist, and they did not become famous, only in Japan. And only afterwards that Randy Rhoads went to Ozzy and became famous by himself, they became famous also without him. And we're speaking about Quiet Riot and their album Metal Health. Another band also that is even more famous as goth rock or goth hard rock, but in this album they were very close to glam metal, and I'm speaking about The Cult and their album Sonic Temple. Now we're speaking about a band that started from the 70s, hard rock of the 70s, and they influenced the glam metal. But afterwards, they became also influenced by it, and I'm speaking about Kiss. Okay, for me, their best album, of course, is Revenge, because it's even more heavy metal. But if we're speaking about Kiss general, I prefer their first album, Kiss. And another also band of the 70s, of the hard rock of the 70s, that was also a big influence for the glam metal, but afterwards it became, it by itself, it was influenced by the glam metal. I'm speaking about Alice Cooper, and here we're speaking about his more influenced by glam metal album afterwards of in the years of the 90s. I'm speaking about Alice Cooper and his album Trash. And I'm continuing with another also band from the 70s, from the hard rock of the 70s, that was influenced afterwards a little bit by hair metal and glam metal. And their first album also is my favorite of them, Van Halen. In the same way, we can speak about bands that they are even more metal, but from the outside they are very close to the whole style of glam metal. And I'm speaking now about Twisted Sister. And I like every album of them, but here I will prefer their first album, Under the Blade. Another band also that we can say that they are more hard rock, not glam metal, but they are very close to glam metal in the whole scene of these years. And speaking about Guns N' Roses and their first album, Appetite for Destruction. And if we're speaking about Guns N' Roses, we have also to speak about Los Angeles Guns and also their first album. And now, another also band that they are not exactly glam metal. Many people, they think that they are something like pop metal or only pop rock. But their first album is very influenced by this style. And I'm speaking about Bon Jovi and their first also album. And last but not least, we're speaking about another heavy metal band that they are they are even more metal than glam metal, but in the beginning, especially in the beginning of them, their style were very close to the outside and the style of how they were dressing and etc. Like Twisted Sister, they were very close to glam metal, but not musically. And I'm speaking about Wasp. And now, for me, the best album of Wasp is the album The Crimson Idol. This is it about the whole scene of glam metal or hair metal and the hard rock of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. They were also very close, and my favorite albums of this genre. From Israel and from Jerusalem, stay metal and stay heavy.